Good morning, everyone. I'm not going to make you do it again, don't worry. That was loud enough. Thank you all so much for joining us this morning. My name is Gemma Patterson, formerly known as Critchley, having just got married, for those of you who are confused about why I've changed my name since the brochure went out. We're here today to talk about video for learning. I've been an L&D practitioner for a while using video to drive learning, and I've also worked in digital marketing and social media using video content to change behaviour. And I'm lucky enough to be joined today by two wonderful people. We have Louise Joyce, who is the Group Sales Training Manager at Arnold Clark Automobiles. Welcome, Louise. And we've also got Martin Greenbank, who is Head of Advertising Research and Development at Channel 4. So we've got some really interesting stuff to share with you today, some actual work that's been done that we can show you, and there's quite an interesting sort of scale between the work that Louise and Martin are doing. And one of the things that I found really interesting when we've been chatting is understanding that Louise operates, like many of us in the room will today, in an L&D team, in an in-house role. Martin comes at it from a slightly different place in that he's actually a customer of L&D, which I'm sure that we'll come on to talk a little bit more about. So without further ado, I will hand over to Martin, who's going to share a little bit about the work that you've been doing together.
Thanks, Gemma.
That's all right.
You all hear me? Good. Well.
That does not want to come up. Thank you.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. As Gemma said, I'm not an L&D person. I'll try and do this nicely. I'm an expert in audience research. There you go. There's a big cheer from the room. I've been at Channel 4 for 6 years. Previously, 20 years in media and advertising and the sort of buying side of the advertising marketplace. Where I work now is Channel 4. Channel 4 is an interesting organisation. I'm going to be talking to you about a project that we did to help educate part of our market, but also everyone within Channel 4, because the project that we were involved in, being quite complex, being quite data-heavy, technical, was a real challenge in how do you actually get people to understand what you're doing, and also how do you educate the industry as a whole. So I work within a team called the Advertising Research and Development Department. So we're on the commercial side of research for Channel 4. For those of you who don't know what Channel 4 is, it's a TV company. We have around 850 employees. That amazes quite a few people because we commission independent production companies to make our TV programs. So where you've got the BBC with 25,000 people and ITV with 15,000 people, we're like an administrative hub for creativity. Channel 4 itself is owned by you guys. It's publicly owned. It's not for profit, but it's completely 100% commercially funded through advertising. So therefore people look inwardly at people like me to say, how can we make more money and to fuel the programs that we make. And we turn over around £1 billion a year out of our content just from the UK revenues that we have. So my world is all about audience research, audience measurement. And it's a really interesting one because this is all changing. It's really complex of how you measure it. And what you're going to get from this, you're going to get an added benefit of learning how, in the next 10 minutes, how TV is measured and how it's being measured now and in the future. So you'll understand a bit more as well. It's a bit of learning for you as well. So my audience was primarily the 800 people that live in our central office in Horseferry Road in London. And it was to educate them on how this all works. They're time poor, they're cynical, and a lot of them are very, very creative. So you have to do something quite creative in return to actually get their attention. The project itself was called Dovetail, Project Dovetail. But our slant on it was, and there's a bit of swearing in this, by the way, not just me, but other people. So we termed it, what the fuck is Dovetail? Because no one really understood what this project was about. And that became a sort of working title that became the end title for the whole project. let me share with you a little bit about TV data. Anyone watch this program? We have a brave person that's put their hand up. This is Naked Attraction. This is going out every, I think it's Thursday night, and it was on last week just after the Barrymore documentary. Did everyone watch that? That was even better. Okay, so the next morning, the way that TV measurement works is that it produces a set of numbers for every program that was watched the previous day. I've just flagged it on this. It arrives on sort of as an email. It's got dashboards. It arrives in various different ways. And this Naked Attraction got an audience of 647,000 and an audience share of 9.4% of people who were watching TV at that time. The people in my office all understand that, and they take it for granted this data comes like that. And it comes because we've got a massive measurement system behind this. We've got a panel of homes that's representative of the UK, and the meters in those homes actually understand what's being watched on the TV at the time, and it's been measured like that since 1981 by a company called Barb, an organisation called Barb, which is all the broadcasters brought it together. So no one asked me on a day-to-day basis, how do you get this data? They start to ask when we say, how do you get data for screens that are not just the TV screen? Because people, I'm sure you all watch TV content on different screens, whether it be an iPad, whether it be your mobile phone, or whether it be a PC. So the world has changed. Now, and this is where Project Dovetail came in, because the people who measure TV, of which we're part of, we had to change as well. And so in 2009, about 2 months before the BBC launched iPlayer, we launched 4OD. And we started to realize that people wanted to watch streaming video. You can't do that in the same way. You can't measure that in the same way. And it's really important because our industry is worth £7 billion and it all relies on this data. So suddenly my job became quite focal as people started to look at me and go, how are you going to measure that? And how's it all going to work? And I had this real quandary because it took me months to understand how we were going to measure it. And to explain that to people is almost impossible in the language that we have. So this is where Project Dovetail came from. Project Dovetail was the Barb initiative to measure all these different screens. And what we've done is basically look at how we're going to take it out to people. So we know all of these things were true, and they still are true today. No one likes complexity. Data and maths can be a little bit difficult, tedious to some, not me. I quite like it. Everyone's busy, everyone's overloaded with information, but the numbers are really important. And if our staff don't understand the numbers, there is no way that we can convince people on the outside world that those numbers are important. So generation of the numbers is one thing, but getting staff to understand that as well. So my little team, I asked people in the team, who wants to take this on as a way of explaining this really complex issue to the whole company? And luckily, I had a couple of my team, who are quite junior, said, we'll take it on if you give me a budget, because they're not going to be able to do it on their own. So I gave them a little budget, and said, right, this is the project. They came back with our rather sweary title. And we said, okay, this is all got to be video-based, I think, because we're competing with all the other messages that Channel 4 do internally. And as a TV company, video is quite important to us. We think it allows us to explain things in a different way. I'm going to show you a bit of video in a minute to give you a sort of an example of what we did. But first, let me just take you through to sort of walk you through sort of how the output worked here. So where we knew we were going to end up with putting stuff on an intranet. And we were going to put stuff around the office, we could put it on screens, we were going to get it out as far and wide as possible. But we had to partition the content into little nuggety bits. So this is a sort of snapshot of, this is actually an external website. If you want to go there, it's down on the bottom right-hand side. You take a photo of that and you can visit that later. This is all publicly published now, so you can actually see all the videos. You can see these tabs along the top. We chunked up the information. We knew that people probably haven't got more than about 10 minutes worth of attention span for this whole project. So we put it into sort of 2-3 minute clips to explain each section. But we did it deliberately in a way that we made it really interesting for the audience, really on brand, really cheeky, and gave people a sort of reason to watch the next one without feeling like they were being tricked into some sort of Machiavellian learning, which of course that was my plan. So we put it into things. How do we get there? How will it work? When will we have it? Why should people care? And then a load of FAQs, but we actually made those as videos as well. We made we used a mixture of different media in the videos themselves. We used people who worked at the channel, so they were familiar faces to people who are just wandering around the office. We have sort of animated sections as well to simplify some of the complex. But I think there's one bit that we had that I don't think anyone in the room probably has. We had clips from shows that we could splice together into the story as well. And that made it a little bit more entertaining. Believe it or not, that was the most difficult bit, because to get the rights to take those clips out of a TV show and use them for learning material, even though it was internal, was unbelievably difficult. Teams of lawyers had to be consulted on this. So I know that you guys will probably just rip stuff off the web and use it, but that was a massive concern for us. I suppose before I show you this clip, the success of this was just, I thought this was going to be good, but I thought it was just, the bar was already so high at Channel 4 that I just wanted to compete with the other kind of information that was being shared around the business. And success to me was just getting a proportion of people, mainly my stakeholders on the commercial side, to see it. And what we actually found is the vast majority of our staff saw it, and then actually the body that measures TV used it to help explain their proposition. So we gave it to all the other broadcasters to use as well, knowing that we would get the plaudits for that. And it ended up winning awards because of that. We worked with a company called Action. Is Action in the room? There you go. Well done. Big round of applause to you. They made this happen, and it was seamless for me because I just stepped back and watched my team do it. So I'm going to show you a little clip now. If you're offended by anything you see, it's not my fault. It's learning stuff. But it's 3 minutes long, and this is the uncensored version that went internally.
Viewers, millions and millions of them all watching TV. But who are they? We want to know who's watching what, so we can commission the right content and value our commercial airtime. Advertisers want to know who's watching what, so they can work out the true value of their campaigns. That's where Barb comes in. Not her. Not that Barb either. This Barb, the Broadcasters Audience Research Board. They tell us who's watching what.
Fucking hell, Benji.
Barb have been in people's homes since 1981, the year before we launched.
Welcome to Channel 4.
They recruited a panel of over 5,000 homes. Each household is fitted with technology that tracks what they're watching. It uses audio matching, a bit like Shazam, to figure out which programmes or advert is on the TV.
Where's the turkey, Jeremy?
What?
The turkey. Where's the turkey?
I thought you were getting the turkey.
You what? No turkey!
The clever bit is that when anyone comes into the room with the TV, they log in. When they leave, they log out.
Oh, I see.
So Barb don't just know what people are watching, they know exactly who's watching it. And because the panel of homes is chosen to represent the UK, it generates statistically reliable data that reflects the whole population. That's how we get our ratings. Clever.
Oh my God!
Well, that is something and a half.
So Barb is owned by the major broadcasters and by advertisers, so essentially it represents both the buy and the sell side. It's incredibly important to have one joint industry standard of currency of measurement. We call it the gold standard of measurement, that everybody can buy into and everyone trades against.
But TV has literally exploded in the last decade. Okay, not literally, metaphorically. There are still loads of people watching linear TV, but we're also watching first dates on our phones, in the bath, or Bake Off in bed. VOD players like All 4 are brilliant when it comes to viewing what we want when you want it. When it comes to research and measurement, it's complicated. Barb already releases a player report which gives overall viewing figures for VOD. Through that, we know how many streams there were over the internet, but we don't know who was watching or how long they watched it for. At the moment, we can't combine the VOD data and the gold standard Barb data.
You have turned into one massive disappointment!
What would the world be like if those two things could come together? Imagine that. Well, you don't have to imagine. This is where Dovetail fits in. Stay tuned to find out. What the fuck is Dovetail? When's it coming? And why you should care.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Martin. Now, I've got to say, that feels like a bit of a first for Learning Technologies. I'm not sure we've had scenes that explicit or the F-bomb dropped on stage before, so well done. Quite proud of that. So going to hand over to Louise now, who's going to tell us a little bit about how you're using video in your organisation.
Fabulous. Okay, so I am Scottish, so if anybody needs any translations, then find a fellow Scot in the room and see if they can do it for you. My mother calls this my best telephone voice, so I hope you understand. At Arnold Clark, automobiles were probably relatively unknown down within London, but within Scotland and certainly every day becoming well known in England, we sell cars. We sell cars, we service cars, and we sell parts. And in Scotland, you can throw a stone and hit an Arnold Clark dealership. We have over 13,500 employees. So we're almost an ITV, I think, going by the figures that you spoke about. So our challenge has always been to try and get Sir Arnold's culture. He passed away a couple of years ago, and it was trying to keep that culture in place because the business was starting to get a little bit like an episode of Game of Thrones, where the Vauxhall franchise wanted things their way and the BMW franchise wanted things their way. And whilst that was all well and good, we wanted to make sure that the legacy of Sir Arnold Clark kept going. So that was our challenge. When we faced that challenge, now to kind of give you an idea, we've got over 150 developers that work solely for us. They build us systems in whatever manner, shape or form we want. So our own internal systems are all hand-built and developed internally. So for the 50 people who wanted to come and approach me today to sell me something, just bear that in mind that we've got 150. But when it came to e-learning, it was something that we really wanted to make sure that we made the right fit. And bearing in mind, it kind of came under my remit, it had to be something that was easy to use. So that was number one. Easy upload, and because we didn't want an off-the-shelf per se, we wanted something that would be adaptable to us, putting our culture and our spin on it. So we decided to go with a company called Litmos, SAP Litmos, and they are downstairs, and that's where I'll be after this. And it was because it was so easy to upload things that you create yourself. So I have a brief video that I will show at the very, very end to kind of give you a summary of what we did, because we don't have the facilities that Channel 4 have or are able to access. And what I wanted to do was kind of put your mind at rest that creating video shouldn't be scary. And you will make mistakes, because I made lots and lots of them. Most of them you'll see up on the screen. I've put some of the good, the bad, and the ones I'm in, the ugly, just to kind of show you that when somebody makes a bit of a blooper, there's nothing wrong with including it, because it shows the realness. And we've kind of taken our lead from what YouTubers do. My daughter learned how to play the piano, the violin, the trumpet, God help me, and the guitar, all by watching YouTube and focusing on just getting the learning when she wanted it in the manner that she wanted it. And that's kind of what we've went for. So firstly, we don't make our e-learning compulsory. With the exception of, there had to be a but, I'm a woman, so there had to be a but somewhere in this. And anything to do with compliance, unfortunately, we want that date and time stamp to say, look, you know, at that point in time, you were aware of it and you had the required level of skill and knowledge. So things like GDPR, that wasn't me, was it? Don't think it was me, I make different noises. But with GDPR, we did make that element compulsory. But in the main, we say if you're adults, we're going to treat you like adults. If you want to learn through this medium, great. And if you don't and you want to learn another way, then that's no problem too. Bearing in mind that with such a highly successful company, we've been going since 1954. Last year was a record year so far, where we've sold almost 330,000 cars and growing. That we are a company that have some very experienced, very capable individuals, and the last thing that I wanted to do within the training department was make it that you must do things. So I tend to kind of look at it from a what's in it from me point of view, and one of the biggest stumbling blocks that we have is the exam time. So every year, November, December, we retest every single member of the sales team and make sure that they are compliant to sell you finance and insurance products. So this is the moment where all these really big hitters, these really experienced, good salespeople, absolutely crap it. They genuinely can't cope with, because it's a very formal environment, it's seated. They go through, even though it's multiple choice open book, hello, but they just genuinely tend to get a little bit nervous. So one of the first pieces that we decided to create was on that. And it was basically going through the previous year's 60 most wrongly answered questions. So a bit like a mock paper. Now, any other industry out there would have had mock papers, but it took me years to get them to sign off on it because we are such a big target. And because we are such a big target, some of the things that we do will feel like a sledgehammer to crack a walnut. So instead of just saying you need to do exams, there's a computer, sign on and do it, no, because, you know, somebody could just be lazy and say, do you know what, I'm going to give you 20 quid, go and sit that exam for me. So we do it in a very formal environment. So when we created that video, we created it very, very quickly. This is me setting up for the fact that it's been improved. Let's just say it's been improved. But we had an 80% take-up rate on people watching it. It was a slow starter, it was a slow burner, and then just before the exams started, it went through the roof. I had people coming into the sessions and saying, you're the woman in the video, I was listening to your voice last night. And I'm thinking, okay, how did you explain that to your wife when you were watching it at 11:30 at night? If you are going to create video though, please don't be afraid of it. You know, I'm a certain woman of a certain height and a certain build and a certain age. You can't be afraid of that. It's about getting your message across. Now, I need to make it clear, we don't believe that video should be the only medium that you use. So don't think it will be able to fix absolutely everything. But for me, it's somewhere where the people who don't want to ask for help can go and get help without letting anybody else know. It's a good reminder. So when you guys leave here today, don't know how much of this you'll remember. I'm definitely remembering the swearing part. That was an awesome part. The sex part was also reminiscent of various experiences. But you'll remember key parts of it. But you won't remember it all. And it's great to be able to then go back and revisit things. So when you're choosing a platform to use, make sure that platform fits with what you want to do. So with SAP Litmos, or ACE Learning as we call it, which is Arnold Clark e-learning, it allows me to say, do you need to see things in a certain order? Can you go in and see it in any order you want? Can you go back in and watch it 3 or 4 times? Do I want to put a quiz in or do I not want to put a quiz in? But what to do is when you have videoed it, show a family member, because if ever you're going to get the absolute truth, don't ask your mum or your dad, because they tend to be quite nice and protective. I showed my daughter, and one of the first ones you'll see, and I'll see if any of you actually pick up on it, but she said I looked like a fat Dora the Explorer. And because I had a very posh telephone voice, she said anytime I was saying things like, have you done it? Well done. And she says, it's almost like, map, where's the map? So, you know, learn from your mistakes, but get it out there. Because ultimately, the videos that you create, and my video that I've kind of thrown together for today, I asked our studio to do a behind-the-scenes element of it to show you. In the clips that you're going to see that are on my video, we use things like iPhones to record it. And just use an iPhone on a selfie stick with a stabiliser. It doesn't need to be big budget, but it does need to be engaging. So consider who your audience is and consider what is it you want them to get out that video. And make sure that there's an element of fun or humour in it, but not at the expense of covering off the, you know, the whole message that you're trying to give. So one of the ones that I've got at the end, I had got one of my guys, because I was sick to death of just using my face on it, Sam Robertson, who's in my team. And he was doing a session on our new customer app, because Arnold Clark is a new customer app for customers to download. And at the end, he completely off the cuff says, let's get out there and make it happen. And it was great because people are then picking up on it. Some hints that I would give you are to break it up. Don't just have the one shot on video at all times. So as we are going around and about at events, we are continually taking footage and then saving it on a computer, so that if we want to break it up with perhaps a shot in a showroom, we can then edit that into it. Wistia has got some really good hints and tips for beginners like me on how to edit video content. There are some fantastic suppliers out there, and Martin's already alluded to some of the partners that are available. So if you are at all unsure, get a professional in to start with. Litmos SAP have a thing called Litmos Heroes, which is basically like a suite of over 1,500 videos, pre-made content that you can purchase and have unlimited use of. We decided initially not to go down that route. And when we went live, we just targeted each one of the areas of our business to come up with 5 courses. Didn't need to be video content, but 5 courses that we could then go to press with, so that when people engaged with ACE Learning, there was something there. And we now have Litmos Heroes, because it's not enough to have the same stuff there, and because we're all doing day jobs, as I'm sure you guys are as well, it's difficult to kind of stop and allocate time to create fresh content. What I would say is make the time so that you're constantly moving forward and adding things, but having a supplier that can give you access to pre-prepared content is a great way to keep your users engaged with the system. Otherwise, they'll just stop going in and you've got a harder job to then re-engage them later on. So in terms of outcome for any of the courses that we've done, well, my Dora the Explorer one, as I said, had an 80% view rate. I did, I think, better one this year. I made sure my fake tan wasn't quite as dark this time, and I got my hair lightened so that I didn't look exactly like her. So I was more Sarah Millican than I was Dora the Explorer. But what we did this time is we've had a 94% uptake. But better than that, at the end of the exam session, we only had 4 people that didn't manage to pass on a first attempt. And I think that alone is making people more confident, which is making them less scared of doing the exams, and that's the outcomes you're looking for. There's the videos that you'll create for the sake of passing a message on, but try to make it meaningful, and that will then engage people to come back. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Louise. I love the sort of experimental spirit that's coming out in that.
Amateur spirit.
I'm sure your 94% wasn't anything to do with the fake tan.
They were probably in to see what I look like this year. Yeah, definitely part of it.
Love it. So we're just going to get your video up so we can play that
Great.
at the end.
Great.
So Ed, I'm just going to share that with you.
We're going to be passing the phone around.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
what
we're
we'll
not gonna
do.
make
We'll
you
just
watch
pass it
on my
around.
phone. Don't worry.
No.
Just don't worry. Brilliant, thank you. So we thought we'd try something a little bit different now. So we've heard some really great stuff from Martin around what's going on at Channel 4, or WTF is going on at Channel 4. We've heard some really great stuff from Louise around sort of how you've taken a bit more of perhaps a DIY approach to getting started with video. So we thought we'd try a bit of a Graham Norton / Ellen DeGeneres type chat show. I'm going to try and be the not so glamorous host. But we've got loads of questions that have sort of come up through the discussions that we've been having around this. But I'd really love to make it interactive. So we will have Q&A at the end. But if anyone does have a comment to make, a point to share, if there's something you've tried or that you want help with, if you've got questions, please just pop your hands up and I'll try and bring you into the conversation as we go.
Absolutely.
So I guess the sort of first question that's on my mind is, we hear a lot about trends at events like Learning Technologies, and video is one that comes up time and time again. So it seems to be it could be seen as a bit of a silver bullet. How does that play out with your other learning that you have in your organisations? Is video a replacement for traditional L&D?
I'll start off here. I think it differs in every organisation. Haven't just worked at Channel 4, and it differs wherever you go. I think there are clear benefits from video, though, that you can explain things in a more human way, and it can be easier for complex things like we hopefully we've demonstrated there to actually come across. You can explain them because you can script them. You can plan for the output more than trying to put everything on a page. But when you look around, say you look around our office, there is which must be the same to every other organisation out there. Everyone these days has an intranet. Everyone has a sort of an inbox with thousands of emails. There is just this overloading of stuff. So it's about cutting through. And I suppose if you think of it like advertising, that's what advertising is trying to do. I'm going back to what I know. Advertising tries to cut through in a cluttered environment. So you make it entertaining. You make the commercials that appear in between programs are little mini 20, 30-second stories that are not designed to give you all the information about a product, but actually just to entertain you a little and hopefully leave you with a more positive feeling about it and a bit of information. And I think that's where video fits in this. It's not the answer to everything. We still rely on more detailed information, reference materials, face-to-face sharing. I suppose our bit that we did there was to stop us being tied up for an entire year doing the same presentation over and over again internally to people who go, I just didn't really get it last time. So we thought, our first thought was, why don't we just video the presentation? And then we thought, that's probably a little less, that's a little more dull than actually going to a presentation to watch a video of a presentation. So we just thought about it in a slightly different way.
Yeah. I really love two of the points you made there. One about cut through, and the second one about efficiency. And I think very often in my role, people have said to me, we've recorded a Skype call or we've recorded a webinar. Can you put it on your video channel? And my answer is always no, because that's not what video is meant to do for us. But you're absolutely right. You can translate those messages in other ways. How about you, Louise? Is it replacing traditional learning in your organisation?
I think the words enhancing is probably the better way to put it. because, you know, even if we think of this room today, there needs to be that level of to and fro for you to have a security blanket of knowing that you've answered everything that you want to answer. When you're creating video, you are the expert, remember that, because if you're the person that's in front of the camera and you've written your script, which is absolutely right, it's because you're the expert. Hi.
Sorry, no, I was trying to catch Gemma's eye, but just something that occurred to me about video and kind of sharing the expertise of people in an organisation. Because I think we could drop your point.
Not at all.
Carry on. Just that I'm the guy who worked with Martin on the Dovetail project.
Let's get you a mic. Sorry.
So I didn't mean to interrupt your point. This just felt like an important thing to say.
Absolutely.
Which is that if you've got people in an organisation who know how to do something or know about something and can explain it, you talked about the idea you could video a presentation or a Skype call. Video lets you effectively do that and have conversations, record them, and then edit them to get the best bits and the bits that actually, by sharing them, you make a difference. And the video that Martin played from Dovetail that bit was largely scripted. Actually, the other videos were largely unscripted, and they came from interviews with experts at Channel 4 who knew about this stuff, and it enabled us to kind of help those people broadcast what they knew as widely as possible in the most effective way that we could.
Absolutely.
So, sorry, I'll shut up now.
No, I think that's a really good point, and I really should pay you money later because it adds into the point that I was going to make. And that's basically that as the expert, that doesn't mean the person in the audience is actually understanding what you're saying. And that's where I feel that video should be an enhancement or a summary of the learning that you're getting and still allow that ability to interact and say, either I absolutely don't agree, so convince me a little bit more, or I don't understand, can we talk about it a little bit more? So on an e-learning platform, it's easy to just put everything in a video content. And what we need to remember, and I think that was a key part of the speeches earlier on, was that people are diverse. They're diverse in so many things, including their learning styles. So having things on a video platform, having even the scripts on the e-learning platform, so if they are a reader, then they can read through it rather than listening to it. And it's just something that we're trying to do. And also an element of Chinese whispers. I don't know about you guys, especially the ones that are L&D providers. You can write a course and you can have presented that course 20 times and then you get a colleague in and teach them how to present that course. They will never present it the way you presented it. And that's okay, because people will learn and add things to it. But if you have something that requires that definitive corporate message or the branding or the belief or the skill that you're trying to get across, having that go-to place that allows them to have seen it from different sides, but then still get the definitive message that you're trying to get across, I think is key.
Makes perfect sense, and thank you for the contribution. Anyone else who's got things to add, please wave, and I will try and spot you. So one of the things that you've talked about a little bit, both of you, is around measurement. And I know measurement is sort of your sweet spot in your day job, Martin, but you've got a lot of really sort of robust data behind what you do as well, Louise, which we don't always see in learning and development. We sometimes have to infer the impact that we've had as opposed to actually be able to physically attach stats to it. Yeah. How have you both tackled that issue of measurement?
I have to say that before we had SAP Litmos, we genuinely couldn't. You know, how could we measure our success? Well, we looked at things like the attrition of staff. Could we get people to stay longer, to perform better? We have a thing called the license program within Arnold Clark, that if you're a new employee, we take you through a journey and we measure you and map you against what we call the minimum standards of the business, so that you don't feel as if you are failing, especially if you're in a branch that have some very high-performing long-term members of staff. So it's about seeing it as a natural progression. But honestly, that was a very, very difficult one to see that direct link from look how good the company is to, and that's entirely down to me and my team. What our ACE Learning, our SAP Litmus system allows us to do is see that direct correlation, and especially with the exam results, that we were able to say, okay, well, what's the view rate like? What was our exam results like last year? And what are they like this year? And then we times that by what the saving to the business was, both in terms of we didn't need to take people out the business more than once. We didn't have the travelling expenses, which meant that our kind of carbon footprint was much less. And bearing in mind we sell combustion engines, we absolutely want to make sure our carbon footprint is minimised. And also in terms of hotel costs. So yeah, it's really helped to have that analytics side of it.
Yeah, things like web analytics and just understanding from any platform it's hosted on, it's really important to understand who has accessed it. Not just who's accessed it, but who's watched it and who's completed all of the viewing to it. So we found out pretty quickly that all the 4 videos that we created, the 4 core ones, were watched pretty much by the majority of all staff within a couple of weeks. And we didn't really have to push that. It helped that our CEO, we got her to watch them and just said, yeah, can you stand up and tell everyone about what the fuck is Dovetail? Mm-hmm. And she's quite sweary as well, so she quite enjoyed doing that. But we didn't have to force people to do it. Mm. And I think that's, as soon as you mandate something to an audience saying you have to watch this, it becomes a bit of a nightmare. The learning we had from all of this was actually our HR team had worked with Actin before and given us a bit of inspiration here. So we had a new health and safety policy, and you think, oh my God, how are you going to get that out to everyone? And normally these things live as a PDF hidden away in some file system, and you say this is really important, so you could print it out, put it on everyone's desk. But no. Someone had the bright idea of making a short video where Barry White sung the health and safety policy while wandering around the office. I don't know how much he cost. I'm sure he didn't cost a lot. But it was the idea that you've got a well-known face singing the health, something that's utterly mind-bogglingly boring. That in a way does the job in one fell swoop. So just think creatively about how it can work for you. The measurement, if you get it right, you get the majority of people will do it without having to force it.
I love that. And again, back to your point about cut through, that's really going to cut through if you've got Barry White doing your fire safety training.
I'd be amazed if it cost more than a few £100.
That's a challenge. Next year, let's get someone on the stage talking about how they got Barry White to do that.
Yeah.
They had Barry White, we had Fat Dora the Explorer, so I think we're doing okay.
Brilliant. So we've got another question at the back. Yes.
Well, just information, the budget for the Barry White project was actually identical to any boring compliance e-learning module for any guide, including Channel 4.
Brilliant. I love that. Is that an exact unit of measurement, the cost of a boring e-learning module? Brilliant. But I think it's a good point in terms of cost. And I guess one of the questions that I had around that, linked to what does it cost, is the stakeholder management piece. So I imagine what you've done here is quite experimental and quite different. What sort of challenges did you face when you were trying to get buy-in to do these kinds of things? And how did you overcome them?
Your initial team. So if you work in the learning and development, I'm sure this is a sort of an everyday thing, but we don't. So we had the problem. We didn't, and our learning and development team didn't think it was their problem either, because we were the experts. They would advise us, but they weren't going to do it for us. So it was just getting a collective approach. I remember doing a kick-off session right at the beginning of the year where we all sat in a room, went through some of the key. My team's quite small; it's about sort of 12 people. So we went through all the major things that we wanted to achieve in the year, and we said, okay, this particular project is going to need a sort of collective effort. This isn't just one person running with it. This is a collective effort from everyone. And we had to be really careful about who we asked to be involved. If you've got rubbish relationships with other departments, and so they're not going to help you necessarily, Because what's in it for them? All you're doing is you're asking for time. Can you come and stand in front of a camera for half an hour where we actually might not use any of the footage from you because you're terrible when you get in front of a camera? You've got to do a bit, you've got to have that goodwill. So it's careful about who you ask to do this. And so stakeholder management, I think it was, my team is particularly quite liked within the channel because we're there to help most people. But bear that in mind, not everyone's like that. And it's a challenge to sort of get, we wanted our CEO to stand up in front, to head up a bit in front of it. I'm glad we didn't, because it might have added a different perspective to the whole thing that we did, and we might have spent a good 2 months trying to get into her diary to get just that time to do something, and she might have wanted a bit more scripting and what do you want me to say, and it might not have come out, it might not have worked, and then you have to use it. If you've done that and you've asked the CEO, you can't not use it. So I think you just be really careful with all the stakeholders and just be open about what you're trying to do. Saying it's experimental was quite helpful for us.
Yeah, definitely. And for us, I think the biggest challenge that we had was even getting the platform in the first place. So we had these 150 developers, and it was, if you want an e-learning platform, Louise, let's just build our own. And what we decided was, if we were going to do that, it would probably take us 5 years, and we would probably be 10 years behind everyone else out there in the marketplace. So for us to go and buy something off the shelf and go into partnership with them was a big, big coup. And I don't mean a big Scottish animal that produces milk. Just in case, because coup in Scotland means something completely different. But when it came to the creating of the videos, exactly like that, and I guess we had the opposite effect, and I blame YouTube, and I blame Channel 4 with the programmes that you guys create, where it's normal human beings that are on it and not polished BBC or Hollywood actors. We had the opposite problem. Everybody wanted on camera with us. And one particular one, we had, I wanted to do a piece on GDPR, not the boring side of it, that this is what the law is telling us to tell you, but right guys, how do you get your customers to actually want to hear from us in the future? And I asked the managers to give me some names of people. And I get one manager coming straight back and said, you need to use John. John's fabulous. He'll be brilliant. He's great in camera. And he was actually the worst at getting customers to buy in. Wow, and I'm thinking, really? You need to have that bit of credibility. So it was a polite no, red buzzer moment from me.
You're a Simon Cowell-Judge moment. I think we had a question from the audience. Just bring your mic. Getting my steps in today.
So really a question for Martin. I work for a big bank. We do boring compliance e-learnings. No, we do better. But we've moved away from these sort of talking heads because, senior leaders saying it's really important you do this for the bank. Everybody drifts off. We haven't quite made the switch yet to doing what you've obviously done, which is finding the right sort of intermediate people to tell the really good stories and to really convince people, engage people, really for both of you. To what extent did you script that for people? How did you prepare people? How did you match the message that maybe they had into the bigger script or the bigger picture that you were trying to achieve? Because that's what we need to solve, and I haven't worked it out yet.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think we had so much complexity around what we could have created, and Barb, with the organisation that actually do the measurement, of which I'm a board member of, they created a 3-hour e-learning technical guide that was like the world's most boring manual that you were forced to go through. And we knew that's the level of detail we had, and so we just had to be quite brutal in saying what's the most important messages that we want to get out. How do we chunk it up into, say, 3 or 4 sections? And it was just the questions, really, saying, what is it? When's it coming? Why should people care? It's just the simple questions. And then it just fell out of what the messages need to be underneath that. Now, sometimes we've done, when I've seen some really good video work in the past, which has just been all animation with sort of lots of bleeping and beep and beep, beep, and things like that sort of fly around the screen. But it can get quite tedious if you're watching 2 or 3 minutes of that just straight. So the idea of breaking things up, yeah, I think the learning that we had was just taking it from, you watch a TV program and you watch a 2-minute segment, there is not one camera shot for 2 minutes. It often, in a conversation on TV, the camera jumps between people, and you can have like 10 or 15 shots, different angles within a 30-second piece. It sounds like a lot because you think, well, that must be every other second sometimes doing it, but that's how it works. It engages the way that people think about conversation as well. So having a straight talking heads, which we have got in our stuff, you have to limit that use. You can't have loads one after the other. Or you get people pointing out ridiculous things, like there's a 40-second clip of me talking on one of those videos, and apparently my team say I don't blink once. And I was thinking, did you remember what I said? No, we're just fascinated how you managed to do that without blinking. And you've got to be really careful how you do these things. So it's jumping between the different media that you could use. And when you're thinking about, even with iPhones, and we do this a lot now with our own research, when we go and do research groups and stuff, we will take 2 or 3 iPhones, have them running, so that we can cut different angles of the same person talking. And my media researcher team are skilled enough to be able to splice these videos together without having to employ the likes of video editing companies. It's amateurish, but it looks pretty good when you get it 80% there.
Okay. An amateur can be engaging as well. I guess I've got a similar challenge to yourself, though, that it's not just about how you're going to keep your learners engaged, but it's also about making sure the tone doesn't go too far the other way. The last thing that we would want is somebody then taking a video and filming it and putting it on another platform, especially if it's a disgruntled employee. And it's really easy to take something that was meant to be quirky and fun and spinning it into a they don't take that seriously within Arnold Clark. And bearing in mind we sell finance and we have to do our specialist automotive finance exams and things, it is that where is the middle ground within it. But don't be scared of it. What I would say is humour is fabulous, but don't let it affect the message that you're trying to give. And also, in my experience, if you make chapters too short, people actually get turned off by that as much as they get turned off by it being too long. Does that make sense? That continual need to click next can really be a real turn off. So it's having something, exactly as Martin says, if you can have that 2 or 3 minute part with different mediums, whether it be a PowerPoint slide, it doesn't need to be anything that's too over the top, but always try and have an element. So within our videos that we're creating now, we try and have testimonies done on it as well, where we just go out with a camera, film 4 or 5 people that do the job daily and say, bring the question up at the bottom of the screen and get them to answer it. And it's a really good way to top and tail it.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
I think that there's also something in, if you do like 10 or 15 minutes of content, I think that can be a sweet spot for people to learn. If that means 3 short videos, so they watch one, you might get someone to go, I'll watch the first one, see what it's like. And they've done that. And they go, oh, that was all right, actually. And then they've already invested their 3 minutes. They only realise they've got another 2 to watch. They'll do the whole lot in one. Because what's really bad is when people watch the first one, which is 10 minutes long, and they go, I'm going to come back to that, and they never do. So they never watch the other ones if you've got a series of them.
Yeah, keeping them interested. I think that's the key. We've got a couple of questions down here, so I'll come to you in a second.
Hi there. We're doing more and more to camera now and doing some training to video. And I totally get with what you say about being natural and being yourselves, but there are those people that would absolutely love to do it but aren't natural. But then on the flip side, you've got the people that are heavily scripted. What kind of skills have you found that people need to be natural, or how have you developed those skills for people that haven't had it so far?
Okay, if you don't mind, I'll kind of step in. You need to be honest. The way that I would probably describe it is like a video photographer or at a wedding, that you would never have someone setting up a picture, taking it, and not telling the bride that their veil was coming across their face. And actually on one of the videos that you'll see my hair kind of starts to go like that over my face at one point, and I've deliberately asked them to put a shot in because I was absolutely raging. So we'd spent all that time done it, and there was a girl in the room who I trusted, and I said to her, why didn't you say, stop, Louise, you're going to need to do something about your hair because it's coming across your face. And it's just about role-playing as well, but you need to have that kind of, circle of trust sounds too kind of circle of trust, but you need to have that ability to say, I'm here to make you the best you can possibly be. So Sam that I use was reading scripts because we have auto cues, and he was reading it like this, and he was saying the next line like that, and I'm saying, whoa, you're not reading something at school, so it's about, okay, what would you say to me normally? And he said it, and I said, well, that's it. And sometimes when you hear it in your head and you go over it, but you've got to have that chance to go over it. What I would say is, I think because, again, of YouTube and because of reality TV shows, people are probably much better at communicating than they would have been years ago. You know, it's maybe just a Scottish thing, but we were told, you know, you don't put yourself forward for anything, and you don't put yourself up on stage, and you know, you don't do any of that. And I think as a result, we ended up with a generation that almost lost its voice and lost its ability to actually communicate. So yeah, you know, there's nothing wrong with it, but let them play it back, let them see it, and give them that opportunity to do it again.
I think sensible questions to experts always works. Never ask a question to someone who's unsure of the answer, because you'll get a car crash of a segment that need retelling many times, or if the answer is too complex and they're trying to work it out as they speak. So always speak to the people who do the stuff. Don't feel the need to give a complex subject to someone because they're quite senior, who isn't like the expert in it, just because they're senior. Give it to the person who's going to eloquently explain why and what they've done. They can talk. They won't need a script then. You ask them a question, say, what do you do for your job? Most people can answer that without having to think too hard.
Brilliant, thank you. Got another question here?
If it's okay, I have two questions. Great. So my first question is to you, Martin. It was a very cool and interesting video. If you needed to do it more technically with more information about the algorithm of this system, would you use video as well?
Probably not in that respect, because the people who are interested in that level, probably I can count on two hands. The challenge that we had with explaining it was that the data, everyone was asking about where this data is coming from. They sort of had a broad understanding of where the existing data came from, but not, if they were challenged by anyone, they wouldn't be able to explain it. So we had to cover that off, which we sort of did in that video. Now you all know that. I'm sure you all know that. You can watch that again. But you'll be as good as anyone in Channel 4 at understanding how TV is measured. The second bit, the technical bit, there are just a limited number of people you need to explain it to. It doesn't make any commercial sense to make more videos, technical videos. It's easier in that thing to go and present it to them, or just talk it through with them. What bit don't you understand? This is half of my day is taken up with conversations like that. And they're always different.
Right. And my second question is to you, Louise. I'm also a sales training manager and also using SAP Litmus, and I'm great. And I just wanted to ask you, I'm curious to know what types of videos. I know we are going to see a couple of examples or not, but yeah, so I'm just curious. I mean, I'm using for role plays, elevator pitch, etc. But if you can share with your experience for sales team, what is the type of videos that works best?
Fabulous. So you will see a kind of suite of different things that we've done. So we've had some videos that we've done in dealerships. The challenges of that is the sound quality. So it's about getting the right mics set up to make sure that it records it properly. We've got just really basic backdrops that we've purchased that weren't expensive at all, almost blue screen stuff, but we have different shades and different colours there. a couple of lights in a studio that's soundproofed, that's allowing us to kind of have footage outside, footage inside, footage in a kind of studio, and then interlacing that with presentation type slides, and just to kind of keep it going quite fast rather than that one view that the person's getting. So we're only at the beginning of this. I mean, we're literally a year and a half down the line of starting this. So what we've got in the future is things like animation. So getting some animation pieces done. We've got a really good concept at the moment in terms of selling, and it's almost like sliding doors, and we're calling it the sales way or the hard way. And it's basically the same customer that chooses to go left or goes right. If they go left and it's the hard way, salesperson's not interested, they're not engaged, they really don't care, versus the way, and it's that kind of knock-on domino effect. And we thought that would be really difficult to kind of show using human beings. So let's make it easier and do it using animations, and that's having a good effect as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions from the floor? One over here. Great, thank you.
One of the things I was really interested in when you use video as your method of communication is how do you go about receiving thoughts, feedback, questions? Because I haven't yet figured that out. So on YouTube, you'd have a comment section, and then if you were the author of that video, you'd reply. But in my organization, particularly, we're quite private, and we don't like to share things that other people are saying in case it brings the whole project into disrepute. Ridiculous, I know, but that's kind of where I work. What would your thoughts be for collecting that kind of information or questions?
Yeah, well, luckily for us, I think we've got quite a lot of what I call gobby people at Channel 4, people who don't mind saying what they feel. So we're a different space there. So if it wasn't quite right, that was my challenge, was to, oh my God, the bar is so high sometimes at a broadcaster that if you're going to make video comment, you know, it's got to be good. But then you can be forgiven as well because it's not your day job. We did put a sort of we set up an email feedback account. We had 2 emails. One was, this is a test to see if it worked. And one is this still working? Because there was no other feedback coming back like that. So that probably doesn't work very well. I think the main thing is just talking to the stakeholders that we had and asking them direct questions, going, oh, did you get a chance to look at it? And you get 2 reactions. You get the bluffer who says yes, and they've watched the first bit, and they didn't go because they're so time poor, but they say, I really want to watch the rest, and you realise that they're a bit, but they're massively in the minority. What we found is when we talk to people, they'd not just seen the first bit or the middle bit and the last bit, they'd actually explored all the FAQs because they realised that they were videos as well, and they were looking for other bits that were quite entertaining within it. So I think it's just, I don't know if there is an easy way of getting feedback.
Yeah,
you could put those questions in it, in the e-learning type thing. But
I guess what I would throw back is, when does somebody's opinion make you then change something else? So for me, it's around view rates. So because we're not making things compulsory, if we create a course and we put it on and it's not getting viewed, we'll do a kind of marketing piece to say, hey, this is here, go and have a look at it. If it's still not getting views, or if it's getting partial views, then I go back and I look at the content and decide whether it's actually doing what I need it to do. However, like you, we set up an email box. We get slightly more, and the good news was it was mostly positive. But what we also wanted to do was, on that platform, ask people to give us suggestions of what they would like next. And that's been a really good way for people to kind of put things on, but a bit like one of the challenges that you had, Martin, when you have one person asking for something and it actually doesn't make sense, commercial sense or efficiency or anything else, to go and create it as video content, it's about exploring what other ways there is to still address it. But yeah, I mean, I think for me it's more that as a head office employee who then goes and travels the country, it's great for people to then feed back and say, oh, I did your video, it was really good, it helped me pass my exam, or you know, I had a mystery shop the other day and I remembered what you said on the video. Those are great things to do, but I would just say be cautious, because everyone will have an opinion, and it's just more the, you know, there's been plenty of movies I've watched and not liked, but I've still got something from it, so bear that in mind.
We did at the end of the year, we always do I'm always asked by one of my key stakeholders, which bits of your research do you think would research the West? So if you go and ask all the stakeholders which bits they value more than others. So we do a bit of research, our own research, by sending out a sort of end of year survey, reminding people about what we've done through the year, asking them, it's anonymised so they can feedback what have they done. This is work for L&D departments as well. What have they done if you don't know directly? What do they find interesting? Get them to rank them even, get them to score them, get them to make suggestions. And then the good news is it usually comes back in the majority with, you know, the standard is rising. This is, you know, loads of positive stuff that I can take to my stakeholders and say, look, money well spent here, because this is what our audience thought about it. The challenge comes when you probably know when you haven't got something quite right, but then you do want to listen to the comments so that you can actually improve it.
I think just one final thing within it, we've stopped doing happy sheets on our training courses. So at the end of a training course, we've stopped giving that sheet that you can say how marvellous the trainer was. What we want to know is, you know, I know my trainers are marvellous. You know, I'm very blessed. I want to know how what we done impacted you when you're back at work. So what we do is we wait a week now, and through the learning system, through SAP Litmos, we send a survey through that medium and ask them to consider it in terms of impact back in the workplace. So it might be a suggestion.
That's super powerful. And on that note, I think about impact. We're just about out of time, but I think it would be a great time to take a look at the video that you put together, Louise. So if we could roll the video, that would be awesome. Thank you.
As a manager, we know that the performance of your business in terms of sales, parts and service, and it doesn't take much to turn this into this, will be important to you. Part of that will be managing how customer inquiries are handled.
So this could link to Real Sale Preview, Drive the Night Away, Test Drive Treats, or even money off other Arnold Clark services.
The way we score Your Car previews has changed, and what better way to tell you than by using some Your Car Preview kit. We're placing extra emphasis on the condition of the vehicle, as well as delivering fantastic personalisation. Let me pass you over to Hazel, who will show you how to do a 5-star YCP.
Hi everyone, my name is Hazel and I'm going to take you through what to do next.
So go out there and make it happen. I'm wasted in this job.
Well, look, Martin and Louise, you've been absolutely amazing. Thank you so much to both of you for coming in and sharing your stories and the amazing work that you're doing. Thank you, everyone in the room, for getting involved. This has been brilliant. Some of us will be sort of milling around afterwards, so please do come chat if we're around. But have a great day, and thank you for getting involved. Thank you both.